Good afternoon and welcome to the latest edition of Fighting the Current. In case you are tuning in for the first time, we are Fighting the Current, where our mission is to exalt the Father without wasting a word. My name is May Ann Dunker, and I am joined in the studio today by my co-host and good friend, Albert Gustafson.
Good afternoon.
How you doing today?
Well, doing all right.
It is a recording day.
It is a recording day.
That's all we're going to say.
Yes.
And we're also joined by our rock star producer back there, Lee Lounsbury, who is a junior at Des Moines Christian High School. Albert and I are both seniors. In case you haven't listened to any of our previous shows, we'll just explain a little bit about who we are and what Fighting the Current is. We were approached by J. Michael McCoy, and he has this dream of having a student-led radio show, and kind of handed us the opportunity to write and produce and do everything for our very own radio show. So everything that you are listening to today has been planned out by us. The topics have been chosen by us. Lee's doing all of the tech stuff back there in the sound room. And we've just been kind of running with this idea and hoping that it is spirit-led and praying that it is spirit-led. But really our mission is to be a positive influence in the media today. And we really believe that what people listen to, what goes in their mind, is critically important to their faith and their walk with God. And unfortunately, there are a lot of negative voices out there in the media. And we want to add to being a positive voice to fight the current, so to speak. So we've done several shows so far from a wide range of topics, and we think carefully about each one that we're going to pick. We've done everything from talking about social media and its effect upon young Christians. We took a couple weeks to do a response to a blog posting from GodIsImaginary.com, which was 10 questions that every intelligent Christian must answer. If you guys don't know Albert is kind of brilliant, and so he's got a lot of apologetics training, and he's gone to Summit Ministry in the summer, and so we just kind of did our best to pound out answers to those questions. And I threw in a comment every once in a while, every time I kind of thought of something I could say.
I think you threw in a few more comments than that.
Yeah, maybe. I guess he gave me
more
the
than
mistake
every
of putting me
once
on the
in a
mic.
while. More than every once in a while.
Yeah, story of my life. Story of my life.
Okay.
But if you've been listening to our shows, you know that we have been absent for a couple weeks. All three of us are pretty involved in lots of things outside of the radio show. But we were gone for 2 of those weeks on missions trips.
That's right.
So today we thought that we would kind of take some time and not only talk about our trips, but talk about mission work in general and from a biblical perspective, and why it's important and what Christians are called to do and why they're called to do it, both internationally and locally and in their everyday lives. So I thought we would just start out by telling our listeners a little bit about each one of our trips. We went on 2 different trips, and just kind of give them a little taste of what we were doing internationally. So Albert, figure we'd start with you. You and Lee went to Honduras.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about how that started.
What do you, how it started?
Well, it was a school trip, right?
Right.
So why did you guys feel called to go? Or why did you personally feel called to go?
Well, I've always been interested, always kind of had a desire to go on a missions trip. For the last several years of high school, and there's been missions trips offered by the school for those past years, for all those, most of those years. Mm-hmm. It just never has worked out timing wise. Other things going on. So, but I guess just the fact that this all lined up and all was the donations, the provision financially was there, and the provision in terms of time was there, and so it, if God's blessing it, it must be God's timing. So
definitely. And this was your first mission trip, right?
Yes, first one out of the country.
First international missions trip. For those of you that don't know, our school has offered for the past couple years several international missions trips for the students to go on. I believe we started that when we were freshmen, right? Was the first one.
Yeah, so one of the two.
Yeah.
No,
So
freshmen.
Yeah, when we were freshmen, they
so 4 years ago.
I know, isn't that weird to say? 4 years ago, they offered a trip to the Dominican Republic, and we had a very small group of students go on that. And then the next year, as increased want to go on the trip happened, they took 2 different trips, one to Guatemala and one back to the Dominican Republic. And our school is a part of what's called ACSI, which is the Association of Christian Schools International. It's a mouthful. And ACSI has sister schools kind of throughout the world, and they're an international association. And so what they did the first year is to the Dominican is they took a group of students to go visit a sister school of ACSI. And so ACSI sponsors mission trips, not only with our Christian school, but with other schools as well that are a part of ACSI to kind of trade groups around to different schools, if that makes sense. And ACSI stopped doing mission trips my sophomore year. I was blessed enough to be able to go to Guatemala when I was in 10th grade, and that was the last year that ACSI did mission trips. So then the school was kind of wondering what they were going to do. But they continued to offer mission trips with the thought that it was important for students to be able to go on it and important to experience that. Albert, where did you guys go this year?
We went to Honduras.
Mm-hmm.
And so we went through an organization called WGO. That's World Gospel Outreach, and there were 2 groups that went.
Mm-hmm.
One went to WGO's what's called the Mission House, and that's where Lee and I were. We tried to get Lee to talk today, but he's
he's a little
producer.
shy back there.
He's the producer, that's where God's gifted him. So we're not going to pressure him too much. Just going to call him out on the radio for it. One group went to the Mission
Mm-hmm.
House. That's where we were, and so we would run medical. We call the medical brigade. We provided for medical needs and mostly that sort of thing, dental needs, optical needs, and worked with the kids and did some evangelization.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. And the other group went to what was called the ranch, and that was I guess an orphanage kind of thing for the Honduran kids, as well as it was a school also for missionary kids.
Very cool. Very cool. So, okay, I'm not too familiar with Honduras. I'm familiar with both Guatemala and Dominican because I've been there, obviously. But what is the culture like in Honduras? I mean, is it like people have never heard the gospel before, or is it like they have Catholic roots? Or, I mean, what was like when you were doing evangelism and stuff? What was that like?
Yeah, they are very heavily entrenched in Catholicism is
Okay.
huge there, but they also have quite a few evangelical churches, and that because that's where we would put our ministry, our medical brigades. We would hold them in the neighborhood church, and so people would line up and come and they would come from all throughout the neighborhood, and we would provide for their needs. And so both we did encounter both Catholic, and basically everyone there's a Catholic, quote unquote,
Okay.
Catholic, but.
Right. And do they have like? Did you see a lot of Catholic churches? Was it like people would go every Sunday to mass, or was it more just like people would say that they were Catholic?
I guess I couldn't speak for their daily lives because I only was there for a week.
True.
But, I would say that most of the people there probably come to mass at least semi-regularly.
Okay.
You know.
So I want to hear a little bit about like kind of your daily process on the trip. So I know there were 70 students that went total on the missions trip. How many went to the mission house? Would you estimate it?
Like it's about 30 and 30.
Okay, so like pretty
35
evenly
and
split.
35, but-
Yeah. Okay, so with those 30, 35 students, I mean, did you have, like, on the first day, was it completely devoted to medicine, or did you split up into a couple groups, or what was that like?
The first day we got there, Saturday we just kind of got there, we settled in a little bit. Sunday, we actually went to the church, the first church where we were going to be working out of. We worked at two different churches while we were there in the week. The first church we did ministry out of on Sunday. We joined them for worship.
Wow.
And we went to a church service with them. There was a translator, so we heard the sermon, and they were the congregation was all just so excited to see us and excited to have us there. It was really just a wonderful thing, just to be able to worship with a part of the church that you had essentially nothing in common with. I mean, these people were not really, really bad off like some are in Honduras, but you know, they're not Americans.
Right.
At this particular church anyway. And they didn't speak your language. They came from very few cultural similarities, but we had Christ in common with them. And because of that, there was just a connection that we were able to have with them, worshiping with them, and just interacting mostly without words, because I'm pretty terrible at Spanish. It was cool to just have that connection with them, just because of the Lord that dwells inside of all of us. And so that was kind of cool. But then you asked about the routine.
But while you're talking about the church service,
I
know now I'm interested in that. There's just so much to say about it. But,
all right.
What was the church service like? Was it similar to something that we would see here in the States, or completely different? I mean, how did people worship? Did they raise their hands? Did they stay still? Like, what was it like?
It was kind of similar to, I guess, what I do on a regular basis on Sundays, but I go to an Assemblies of God church, so it was a little more lively than even our Pentecostal church, but a little more lively, just because I guess they're more lively people. You know what I mean? So it was a pretty regular evangelical service. There was worship, and then just really solid preaching and exposition of the word. I will say it was probably longer than most evangelical sermons. It was a little longer than our sermons, but
true. Funny how I always notice that too when not always, a couple times I've left the country to go on a missions trip. I noticed that about church services, because Americans just have this unsaid pressure to be on time. And I mean, even not at the church I go to now, but at my past church, they would keep like this big clock in front of the pastor as he was preaching. So they would make sure that he wouldn't go over time or whatever, because everyone has their crazy busy schedules. And I always think that's so interesting with other cultures, is that they really don't run on a time. And like that's how it was in Dominican too, is like, you know, we would we invited this family over for dinner on one of our nights, and we said, you know, be there at 4, and all of us are like, well, 4:00 is so early for dinner. And our host was like, oh, that's 4:00 Dominican time, which is basically 6:00 American time. Just saying that everything kind of runs like hours later, which is something that I like, because I'm not super great at being on time. So I wouldn't mind living in Dominican time for the rest of my life. It'd be good. We call it dunker time at my house. But yeah, that's super interesting. Interesting to compare like how different people worship. And I know we did a show a couple weeks ago on what is worship, and about how worship isn't, you know, just standing and singing, or just standing or sitting and listening to a sermon, about how people can worship in a variety of forms and fashions. And on that note, we have to take a break. Once again, you're listening to Fighting the Current, where our mission is to exalt the Father without wasting a word. A huge shout out to our sponsors, J. Michael McCoy and Tom Coates of Consumer Credit of Des Moines. Thank you for sponsoring us. We'll see you when we get back from the break.
If you choose to obey the power of sin, it leads to death. If you choose to obey obedience, it leads to righteousness.
Forgiveness is just the beginning of life in Christ. God wants us to live for Him now.
And because of Jesus Christ, the gospel was preached, and you and I are blessed today because of Abraham. Did you know that? We're blessed.
Experience Truth, 99.3 FM.
Yes, now your favorite programs on Webcast One Live can all be watched and listened to on any Android or Apple device. Your phone, tablet, or iPad. Yes, your favorite shows on Webcast One Live are available live or on podcast wherever you go. Let me introduce to you some of our great shows.
Shalom! Every week on Understanding the World with Rabbi David Kaufman, we'll talk about issues in the Middle East, issues related to the Jewish tradition and religious traditions in general, and keep you up to date on exactly what's going on around the world. You may know some of the story, but you haven't heard all of the story until you've heard it on Understanding the World with Rabbi David Kaufman and our special guests we have on every week.
Hey, this is Doc with Doc and Lefty. I want to tell you about our brand new time slot. It's from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. It's on the same night, Tuesdays. We now follow Ed Fallon and the Fallon Forum on webcast1live.com. I want to tell you a little bit about our show. Our show is focused on local, state, and national, and sometimes international politics. We like to keep people updated and informed. We also have very interesting guests. So please join us every Tuesday from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. on webcast1live.com.
So when you want to watch your favorite Webcast One program, remember, there's an app for that. You know, there's an app for that.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Get away from us, you neat old credit card. We don't have any more money. We're in trouble now. Save us! Help! Somebody save us! Somebody help! Help! Save us!
Hi, I'm Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of Des Moines. If your credit card's a little too animated, give us a call.
Hooray! We're saved! Consumer Credit, you're our hero!
We are back. Welcome back to Fighting the Current. My name is May Ann Dunker, and I'm joined in the studio today by my co-host and good friend, Albert Gustafson. We've also got our rock star producer back there, Lee Lounsbury, running all the tech for us. Once again, a huge shout out to our sponsors, J. Michael McCoy and Tom Coates of Consumer Credit of Des Moines. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to be a positive voice in the media and sponsoring us to be played every Saturday on 99.3 KTIA. Well, before the break, we were talking about why Albert and I and Lee have been gone for the past couple of weeks. We were off at 2 international mission trips. One trip to Honduras, which Albert and Lee went on, and another trip to the Dominican Republic, which I participated in.
You haven't talked a whole lot about, so
my turn?
Yeah, I think so.
All right. Well, we're kind of bouncing back and forth here. We've just got so much to say about what God was doing. Before the break, we explained a little bit about DMC-sponsored mission trips, so trips sponsored by our high school. And our high school is a part of ACSI, which is Association of Christian Schools International. My missions trip was not actually affiliated with our school. We called our trip 4 Girls with a Mission. So myself and 3 other senior girls got together and really felt called to go on a trip together. It was kind of all started by my friend Molly Rep, who I wish could be with us here today. But she had just a huge heart for the Dominican. And she had gone 2 years previously, both her freshman year and her sophomore year, to the same town in the Dominican, and to work with the same schools, the same kids, the same bateys, and just felt so strongly called to go back. Her junior year, she went to Honduras, and was a good experience for her, but she felt so strongly connected to the Dominican. And I tell you, that girl was going back. I mean, she was all prepared to go by herself if we didn't want to go. So as a group, myself, Rebecca Bell, who's been on our show before, Aslan Armstrong, and myself really prayed strongly about going, and it just all kind of lined up. The finances came in, and we had lots of generous donations, generous support, lots of people praying for us and encouraging us and supporting us. And we got there. Somehow by God's grace, we got there. So we knew a missionary who lives in the Dominican. Her name is Mercy. And Mercy is married to a Dominican man, but Mercy herself was a school teacher, I believe in Massachusetts. And she took her high school a couple years ago to the Dominican on a missions trip and met her husband Julio there, and they fell madly in love, and now they're off doing God's work together in the Dominican. Just a phenomenal couple, phenomenal people. And my family would like to call Mercy missionary in a box, because she just is incredible, organizes everything for us. So basically, we sent her our money, and she organized a place to stay for us and food for us and work for us to do during the week. And our week was spent doing a lot of different things. She told us that she really wanted us to get a glimpse of what being a missionary was like in the Dominican. And so most of the time when she has groups come down, she'll take them to the same school in the Dominican, and they'll work there day after day, or she'll take them to the same batey and they'll work there day after day.
What's a batey?
I'll get to that.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, don't worry. I know that word confuses people. But we did a lot of different things. So throughout the week, we went to several different bateys, which I'm now going to talk about because my heart was so connected to the bateys. So the Dominican Republic, if you're not familiar, is connected to Haiti. It's an island out there, and the Dominican has a very large problem, as the government would call it, with illegal refugees from Haiti filtering into the Dominican, trying to find work. Now, the Dominican is not very well off, but it's better off than Haiti is. So people will come in from Haiti looking for work mainly in sugarcane fields, and that's kind of the Dominicans' one industry is sugar and coffee. And so they'll come looking for work, and when they can't find work anymore, they just stay put. And so a batey is the Haitian word for village. So it basically just means a village, but it is the slum of the Dominican, just the slum of it. I mean, these people live in dirt houses, and we went to several different bateys, and each one is different. Each one has a different feeling to it, different things that are good or are bad about it. Our first day, we went to a batey called Santa Alicia, and this one is right outside of Boca Chica, which is the town where we stayed. But this batey was more connected to real life than several other bateys are. There are lots of bateys that are out in the middle of nowhere and just have no connection to the world or to schools or to factories for jobs. But Santa Alicia was pretty close to the rest of the world, giving them a better chance for education or for jobs. And so we went, and honestly, I'm going to be honest, I struggle with short-term missions. I do. I really struggle with short-term missions because I think it's so hard to come in and have this American way of thinking about how we're going to fix everything, or say that we're going to build relationships with people despite the language barrier and despite only being there a week. And I know that none of that is true. I know, but I struggle a lot with that kind of mindset of people coming in during short-term mission trips. So I struggled a little bit when we came in, and we had this theme throughout this week of serving because God served us first. That was what we would remind ourselves in the morning. We'd wake up, and the four of us would look at each other and we'd say, remember guys, we're serving because God served us first. We're loving because God loved us first. We're being the hands and feet of Jesus because he was that to us first. And And so really a lot of our trip was focused on serving. So we would go to the Bateys, and, we're 4 girls. And so I think there's a lot of value of coming in and a group kind of building something, building a project, or there have been groups that have come into the Bateys and built wells or built houses for the people of the Batey. And I think there's a lot of value in that, because that's very, very lasting, something that will really, really leave an impact. And we couldn't do any of that because we were 4 girls, right? So we're not much help with construction. So what we did instead is we raised money from lots of generous people. So if you're listening to this and you gave money to our trip, thank you so, so much. We are endlessly thankful. But through the generous support, we were able to raise enough money to buy the supplies to build a roof for one of the houses at the Batey. And this certain house at Santa Alicia hosted a breakfast program for the kids. And so Mercy, her job is to find sponsors for the kids of the Batey, and people will sponsor them to buy a school uniform for them, to pay for them to be a part of the breakfast program, and anything else that the kids might need that they wouldn't have otherwise. And so there's also a woman hired in the Batey to do all of the cooking for the breakfast program. And then she'll bring it out to the kids, and whether it's raining or shining, the kids will just sit and eat in the dirt. And so we were able to raise money to buy the supplies to build a roof for the kids to sit under, so they don't have to sit in either the scorching sun or out in the rain. And then we were able to hire some of the men from the Batey to come in and build that for us. So it was kind of a nice way to give jobs to the men in the Batey when they wouldn't have it otherwise. But the rest of the time, what we really did is just be in the hands and feet of Jesus. So we would come in, and Mercy always told us that a big thing for the kids was touch, or was love, because a lot of the kids don't get that. Now in the Bateys, there are what is called community children, or that's kind of the name that we gave to them. So people will come, and families from Haiti will come and bring their kids, and if they can't take care of their kids, they'll just leave them in the Batey. And so they don't call them orphans, because the kids always get taken care of, but they call them community children. And so the community will kind of just come alongside the kids and make sure that they're fed, or they would have different places where they would sleep. So I would walk around with a kid, and I would ask them to show me where they lived, or ask them to show me their family. And they would tell me, sometimes I sleep here, or sometimes I sleep here, or, everyone here is my family. We're all family. And so in the Bateys, I got this huge sense of community. I mean, it was just shocking, and I thought about how that's not really how America is. We kind of all have our own little groups and our own little families, and, there's not anything particularly wrong with that.
Highly individualistic. Exactly.
Yeah, but in the Bateys, it was just such a huge sense of community, and the community life was centered around the churches as well. So the pastor was kind of the person who would lead the Bateys, or lead the people, and he would not only oversee spiritual life and preaching sermons, but school was also held in the churches. So like the schoolhouse was the church, was the community building where people would kind of come and gather together. And you would see that so strongly in the Bateys, was that church was just really the heart of it all. But I was just so struck by the sense of community that was within the Bateys. It's just something that I haven't experienced here in the United States particularly well. So we would get to be a part of that sense of community. And Mercy would always tell us that the kids just looked forward to whenever Americans came. And so she takes groups down there fairly often, but it is just the highlight of their year. Just to have someone come in and hug them, or touch them, or tell them that they're beautiful, or ask them what their name is. And that's another thing I was really struck by too, was that the kids just loved when we asked them what their name was. Something as simple as that. And, I find that here in Des Moines too, when I work with the refugees over in Des Moines, is that names are such a huge thing, because when you give someone a name, you give them an identity. And I've never really thought about that before, because unfortunately I'm really bad with names. So I have trouble remembering them, especially when they're in Des Moines. I work with a lot of Burmese refugees, and their names are so tricky, so hard to remember. But that was huge for these kids, just to be even asked what their name was, and to have us say their name back to them, as if we're giving them a sense of identity. So it was really the small things with these kids that really went a long ways. And of course, me being the skeptic that I am, I struggled all week long thinking, these people have heard the gospel before, because Dominican, much like Honduras, has Catholic roots. So most people proclaim to be Catholic. If not that, they've all heard the gospel before. And so one of the things that Mercy would always tell us too was that groups would come in and they would want to put on like a vacation Bible school for these kids, or they would want to, have all these great plans for evangelism. And like the reality is that these people have heard the gospel before. And obviously we need to continue to hear the gospel and to preach the gospel to ourselves every single day. Even here in the States, we need to do that. But it's not like we're going to go in and have new believers, because people, they've all heard the gospel, particularly in the Batays, where they're so centered around the community of their churches. And so
were those churches like, were they Catholic churches? Were they evangelical?
No, they were. I think I would say they were pretty similar to being evangelical churches.
Okay.
Most of the pastors there haven't had any formal training, and so it wasn't like here in the States where we would say like it's a denominational thing, or they're a Baptist pastor or a Lutheran pastor, or they've gone to seminary. It really wasn't like that, because there isn't much formal training that can be done in the Batays. So I would say they were pretty similar to evangelical churches.
Okay.
But yeah, like I said, not like in the States where it's run by time, or it's run by the content of making sure that they stay within an hour sermon. But it really was very, very spirit driven, very spirit driven. That's what I got a huge sense of. Unfortunately, we are going to have to take another break here right in the middle of this. But we are going to pick up right where we left off when we come back. Once again, you're listening to Fighting the Current, where our mission is to exalt the Father without wasting a word. My name is May Ann Dunker, and I'm joined in the studio by Albert Gustafson and our producer back there, Lee Lounsbury. A huge shout out to our sponsors, J. Michael McCoy and Tom Coates of Consumer Credit of Des Moines. Thank you for sponsoring us and making us able to play every Saturday. We'll see you when we get back from the break.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershide.
I am administrative manager.
I am the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
If we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, it's your home.
It's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're gonna do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's gonna be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're gonna do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed right or it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
If you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you gonna say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're gonna be listening. They're gonna wanna know what your challenges are. Then they're gonna come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? You can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me. But is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though. I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm going to take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed right or it's free or 100% money back.
enough said.
And welcome back to Fighting the Current. Once again, I am May Ann Dunker, joined in the studio by my good friend and co-host, Albert Gustafson, as well as our producer back there, Lee Lounsbury. Before the break, I was rambling on for 15 minutes about a mission trip that I recently went on to the Dominican Republic. In case you haven't noticed our absence in the past couple of weeks, we've been gone off doing the Lord's work in both Honduras and in the Dominican Republic.
Which we're only a little offended if you didn't notice.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Only a little.
And we just wanted to give you listeners out there a taste of what we were doing and why we were doing it. So at this point, you've heard a little bit of what we were doing over in those two countries. So Albert and Lee went to Honduras and we're doing a lot of medical work, some adult evangelism, and I was off in the Dominican getting a taste of everyday life of a missionary, doing lots of different things, working in different bateys, visiting several different schools in the Dominican, really just trying to love on the people. And I mentioned earlier in the show about how I struggle with short-term missions. And I want to talk on that for a minute, both in relation to our trip and just in general about what is the importance of mission work. Why do we do both long-term mission work and short-term mission work? Albert, I just want to hear your thoughts on that a little bit. Why is it important? Why are trips like this important?
Well, first of all, obviously, I mean, spreading the gospel is important.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, there's really there's a wide variety of reasons why you would go. I guess, are you asked out of the country specifically? What do you?
Yeah, sure, either one.
In terms of international missions, I think the thing I've had most out of it, I guess specifically going to Honduras, or a third world country, a point that was really sort of driven home to me there is why Jesus said it's difficult for a rich man to go into heaven.
Mm.
And so in Honduras, we were able to show the gospel to those people in a physical way.
Mm.
We were able to provide for a need they had, whether they needed dental work or they needed glasses, or they needed to get just a general checkup, or they needed drugs for their. A lot of them, the water's really bad down there. So
same in Dominican.
A lot of them have parasites in their stomachs, so they need anti-parasite stuff. They need antibacterial drugs. So we were able to share with them the gospel in a physical way first, and then afterward we would have them come sit down and we would just share the gospel, straight out, just talk with them about God and their relationship with God, and sort of walk them through salvation if they're not familiar with it, or if they were already a Christian, just try and kind of figure out how we could encourage them or just pray for them or whatever they needed spiritually. But because we were able to share the gospel with them in a physical way, they understood the gospel when we explained it to them in its literal,
Yeah. Gosh, I
so
love that.
it makes it you understand why it's difficult to evangelize in a place like America where everybody has all their needs met all the time by their own, by what they think is their own doing.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
gosh, that's striking.
Yeah.
You know, and I wonder sometimes because my heart is so drawn to international missions. I mean, that's what I want to do with my future.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I almost think that is easier than trying to evangelize in America.
Yeah.
I mean, they're different.
And the other thing is, they're just so open to hearing about it. They are
right.
The people of Honduras are. It's so cool. They're not offended by ideas that are different from their own. That you know, even if the ones that were obviously really didn't want to be there. I never had anybody like trying to hurry off or, you know, just get out. The ones I only had two that didn't, that either weren't Christians or didn't, that I talked to that didn't want to accept salvation, or at least pray the prayer and go through with it, at least to maybe just kind of to oblige me. But they're so not about themselves, so respectful toward your ideas. So they just want to make you happy, you know, and
it's a selfless love. Love.
And even like all their prayer requests were, I pray that just pray for my family, pray for. It was hardly about themselves that when they would because even if they didn't accept salvation, we would still come. Oh, can I pray for you for something? And they would always say yes. They would always say yes to prayer. You know. So people aren't so offended by, I guess. Differences, yeah. Just they're much more open. They're much.
Yeah, no, I understand. And that's how it was in the Dominican too. And the thing that I noticed a lot, this was also kind of a recurring theme throughout our week, was listening. And this came in a couple different forms of listening to what other people had to say. And that came both from us listening to them and them listening to us. And, okay, let's be honest, I'm not the best listener in the world, okay? So this is a little bit of a struggle for me. But I got to see huge examples of that because it's a selfless culture. It's a culture where people want to hear what you have to say. They're interested in who you are and what you're doing there and why you're there. And as a result, I was able to sit down and listen in return as well. And not only that, but listen to the voice of God as well. This is, again, something I struggle with in my prayer life, is sitting and listening to what God has to say. I mean, and I think it, you know, and that's what correlates to me being a bad listener to people, is not being a good listener to my Father in the first place. But I found that removed from the culture that I currently live in, and a reason why I think it's hard to evangelize here in the States, is that there were less distractions in the Dominican. No technology, for one thing. In case you missed our show on social media, I hate social media. So Mac, if you're listening, this is not a hate speech, but I do not like social media. And less places to be, less pressures of a busy schedule.
Yeah.
And the chance to sit back and listen. I mean, on our last day there, we took a silence retreat, is what Mercy called it. And each one of us went off by ourselves, and we sat and we just listened. We listened through scripture. We listened through journaling. We just sat in silence, or we prayed. We didn't talk to each other. We didn't pray for each other. We sat and listened. So valuable. And like I said, something I'm bad at, but something that's so necessary, because you can't go out unless you're filled up, and you can't ever be filled up unless you listen for what God has to say. And that's something I really noticed about the Dominican, is when we talked to the people there, you know, they would speak as if they had just received a word from God. You know, God said this, or as I was praying, he told me that. Does that kind of make sense what I'm saying?
One of the things that I was struck by the, I guess what.
And Albert, I'm actually gonna let you pick up on that when we get back from the break. Sorry to cut you off. Once again, you're listening to Fighting the Current, where our mission is to exalt the Father without wasting a word. We'll see you when we get back from our short break.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
If you choose to obey the power of sin, it leads to death. If you choose to obey obedience, it leads to righteousness.
Forgiveness is just the beginning of life in Christ. God wants us to live for Him now.
And because of Jesus Christ, the gospel was preached, and you and I are blessed today because of Abraham. Did you know that? We're blessed.
Experience Truth, 99.3 FM.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Back to Fighting the Current. Once again, my name is May Ann Dunker, joined in the studio by my good friend and co-host Albert Gustafson and our producer back there, Lee Lounsbury. Albert, I'm sorry I cut you off right before our break.
That's okay.
So I want to let you finish your thought there. If you just tuned in, we're talking about our recent experiences on international mission trips. Albert and Lee both went to Honduras, and I went to the Dominican Republic. For about 10 days apiece. So, Albert, I just want to let you kind of finish your reflection there about your trip, what you were going to say.
Yeah. So, one of the things I was struck with, that going on a missions trip, as much as you expect to be a minister, you get ministered to.
So true.
Almost as much.
If not more.
If not more, yeah.
Yeah.
And so our translators, we had a huge group of extremely capable, very talented translators with us, which is wonderful because I'm terrible at Spanish, as I mentioned before. And so especially in the evangelization area where we would mostly just sit down one-on-one with the Honduran and a translator, these translators, especially a couple of them, are just so dedicated, so dedicated to the Word of God. And so well studied in it that it's like it's a part of them that just comes out. You know, it's like the knowledge of the word is so intimate that in any given situation they can just, you know, they just have scripture for it immediately, and it's there. It's
a part of them.
A part of them.
Right.
It's really a tool. It's in their tool belt. Like, and so many of us that just don't, we don't use this tool as much as we can because we're not that, I thought that, I think 15 minutes of study in a day is, oh man, studying the Bible for 15 minutes. That's good, right? These guys study the word for 3, 4, 5 hours in any given day. And this is the word of God. Of course, it deserves to be treated with that kind of dedication. So that just challenged me.
Yeah.
That just challenged me. Just that and so I saw that throughout the week in a couple of guys who were like, maybe 40, 50, whatever. So they're older than me, they've had more time. And then this guy who was like 25 came over to my evangelism station and he was like, well, I'm a Jehovah's Witness. What are you going to tell me? What? So I sort of stumbled over my words for a few minutes, started to take him to a couple passages. I was like, no, that's wrong. And he gave me like 5 passages to just, and he's like,
wow.
Yeah, it was just incredible. Just they know what to say, what to,
That's super challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got challenged in a couple different ways over the trip. The first one I've already mentioned is learning to listen. The second one is a little more practical, and that came from my experience on the last day. On the last day, we went to a special needs orphanage, in which, in the Dominican culture, it's very shameful to have a special needs child. Very shameful. So people would come, and this orphanage began as a church, and people would come and just dump their kids at the church, expecting them to take care of them. And eventually, Mercy brought in this huge group of people to build this beautiful facility for them. And this church, I think they were from some church from Texas, and they said that they would come in and that they would sponsor this beautiful orphanage to be built. So they came in, they built the first floor. It's a beautiful facility, started construction on the second floor. And then they decided that they were tired of giving money to this ministry. So they just stopped. So I wish I had pictures to put up, but if you look at this orphanage, it's literally half built. So like some of the rooms don't have roofs over them because the second floor just never got finished. It's half done. And they don't have the money or the labor to be able to finish it. So we're going back a year from May. We're taking 50 people down, $2,000 a piece, and we're going to finish that orphanage. Because what that told me is that Americans have this way of coming in and thinking that we can fix everything, or promising that we can fix everything, and then we don't. It's a broken promise. I was definitely super challenged because I always think that I have the solution to everything. It doesn't even matter. It doesn't matter what context I'm in. I think I have the solution. And I think that's oftentimes our mindset as we go into minister to people, thinking that we have the right words to say or we have the right resources to give. And it's not always up to us what the other person needs. Does that kind of make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And like it's not something that we can come in and treat it as if it's something we can just get bored of and stop doing. You know what I mean? Like ministry is something that you continue. It's a continual process. Mm-hmm. So I was super struck by that, super motivated to go back. So that's exciting. But more so thought about how I do ministry in my everyday life and making sure that I don't make promises that I can't keep or give up on people that need to be ministered to. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
What I'm saying?
That's one of the things that I just really enjoyed. I thought was really cool. Part of our I just really enjoyed the evangelism part. We did different jobs every day. Mm-hmm. Whether we were working with kids or in the medical area or pouring concrete floors for people they have dirt floors.
Right.
I really enjoyed evangelism. Just allowing the Holy Spirit to speak through me, because the last day I was in evangelism, and the first few people that came over, I just felt like I had nothing to say to them. I had a more aggressive translator. The translators have varying degrees of letting you have independence. This translator I had to kind of work with throughout the day and sort of be a little bit more assertive about to get any words in. And she was about getting them to pray through the prayer, and you know what I'm saying, and just accept it.
Just move on. Yeah.
But so the first few, we just kind of, I'm afraid that perhaps I might have, well, God's will is always done. So I guess there's no, I can't question that. But I just was able to see throughout that day that God is so sovereign, and he started working through. I had doubts about it. And then God just show me what I need to be doing here. And immediately the next person, he showed me words that to say to them, and I had, and the rest of that day I could really tell that he was just working through me, and so it was just cool to see how he answered prayer and how he just spoke through me, and so.
Awesome. And with that, unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap up our show. Once again, we're fighting the current. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we will see you next week.